Welcome to the Smart Driving Cars podcast. We appreciate you spending time with us once again. This edition is made possible by CARTS, the Corporation for Automated Road Transportation Safety, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to safe and high-quality mobility for all. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi, Alain.
Hey, good evening, Fred.
Hope you had a great weekend.
Absolutely.
On our agenda today, a presentation you delivered at the International Road Safety Symposium in Vancouver very recently. This is titled A New Deployment Framework for Autonomous Vehicles. Give us the overview of what this symposium was about, and then let's take a look at this presentation.
Yes, given that I'm on sabbatical this year, I've been going around the world almost, giving talks in various places, Austin, Memphis, LA, Rome, Florence, Vancouver. And so I was in Vancouver last week. Put together a talk for a safety conference where I was asked to talk about safety of autonomous vehicles. They were dealing with safety of sort of all modes of transportation or all modes of road transportation and city transportation, but focus on that. And I just felt that given the audience yes, safety is important to all this, but I just thought given everything that's been happening, I wanted to take a step back and really look at where we are. And so I put together this presentation, and I'd really like to bring it out here. We'll have it linked in Smart Driving Cars and e-letter, and it will be linked in the podcast and Zoomcast. But I just thought we need to take a step back a little bit and see where we are, and most important, to see where we're going. And let's get to deployment, and deployment that is returns some value back to the investors, as well as deliver value to society, which I think has been the important motivator here for much of this investment. So I just like to go through the presentation here for the folks.
Well, let's have a look.
Yes. So Fred, really changed the title from what was in the program to really what I think is a new deployment framework for autonomous vehicles. What's new about it is that it's not what the developers of autonomous vehicles, or at least some of it is what they've been focused on, and others isn't. Certainly for, as we'll see, for safe and self-driving cars, it absolutely is going down the whole deployment opportunities and visions that have been out there. But for driverless, I think things need to go in a completely different direction than where they've been going. So much has been happening lately. We had Cruise back in July show up in GM's quarterly report, in which it came out, they're losing $5 million a day. And so that sort of put some rumbles through, saying, oh, my goodness, what's going on here? And then there was a leaked memo from Aurora back in September 2nd, in which Chris Urmson basically weighed some spin-outs and layoffs and acquisitions against sales to big tech, and really with respect to a situation in which when will revenue start, and will they be able to survive until that's that start of revenue for the company. And then The Verge had back in October 18th that FedEx is shutting down its robot delivery program. This is with the low speed vehicles that have been, delivering lunches in California. And I guess FedEx has decided that it's probably not the way that they want to go in terms of doing home delivery. And then we had back on October 19th, some high expectations when Waymo said it was bringing robo-taxis to LA. But then when one looked at, how many and when and whatnot, I guess my conclusion was it's very disappointing given all the wonderful work that Waymo has done in terms of the technology, in terms of safety, to see that the deployment in LA would be I guess, infinitesimal. And then the challenges of even not being able to gain revenue until the Public Utilities Commission lets them do this as a business seems to suggest, oh my goodness, we've been great at testing, but when are we going to do deployment? And I think Mobileye last week going public, doing an IPO, having a major pop of 37% after being spun out of Intel was really a positive sign. But of course, if you look at what they put out and Mobileye put out in advance of the IPO, you can see that at least Mobileye has revenue. It's not just been pre-revenue company, and it has substantial revenue into the OEMs, basically for the purpose of providing software and systems for advanced driver assistance. And so that's an optimistic point, at least in one market category for this automation technology. And then, of course, on October 26th, then all of a sudden, Ford with VW-backed Argo shuts down, and that is a major turnoff. Basically, the comment is that driverless mobility is really very far into the future. In short term, there are opportunities with respect to advanced driver assistance systems and safety systems in vehicles that are sold in in dealerships, the way that cars have been sold, at least since Henry Ford, and that part of the business has substantial opportunities. But what Argo AI was going after, the driverless piece to provide mobility, really is too far in the future for Ford to continue to move forward with Argo. And then
pretty much all these headlines, Alan, are things that we've obviously talked about in the podcast, and obviously the Argo story hit home for a lot of people, covering autonomous vehicle technology, and I think there was speculation that Mobileye did pretty well almost because of Argo.
Yeah, and I should point out that certainly their price has held through the Argo situation and today, so it hasn't tanked, and maybe was helped. And in fact, some things we'll talk about today is that VW is going to now snuggle up with Mobileye to move forward. So that's quite optimistic. But then you have the Secretary of Transportation coming out talking about the valley of death as autonomous cars write checks they can't cash. Yes, in certain markets so far, that's been the story, but in other markets, everybody's doing quite well, thank you, and we'll discuss those, and we've talked about it in the podcast. But I just thought, in terms of this presentation, taking a look at all this is a good thought. And then The Verge on the 27th, Ford thinks driver assist is safer than driverless cars, but it's fooling itself. Is a safer. Ford thinks the driver assisted is a safer bet than driverless car, but it's fooling itself, and at least that's Andrew Hawkins' thoughts. That's really saying that at least he believes, we believe that still there's enormous value in the driverless car concept, and that driver assist is good and so on, but that is sort of the nominal value, or the small market in all this. So much has been happening lately. So instead, what I decided in the talk was to take a step back, look at the fundamentals of mobility, identify the societal challenges associated with mobility, and the role of technology as a potential disruptor of consumer choice. And to use these elements, the fundamentals of mobility, the societal challenges, the role of technology as the disruptor of consumer choice, because really that's what automation is here. It's technology that is anticipated to be a disruptor, and use these as a guide to deployment of automation in such a way that the marketplace responds to alleviate mobility challenges and improves the fundamental thing, improves quality of life. That's why we're doing all, or at least that's what I think we're doing all this, is to really put it out there, get it used, solve problems of certain market classes, and improve quality of life. So if we go to Mobility 101, as I went to talk, the fundamentals of consumer choice, it's important that we go back to the fundamentals, because the choice is to go or don't go. And if we decide to go, where, when, and how. I mean, that's really all mobility is. It's a consumer choice. We individually make these choices each time we travel, and actually each time we don't travel, if we decide not to go. And why do people take trips? And as I tell my classes, as a fundamental first day of class, to maximize the expected place, time, utility of the individual. That's why you do it. You say to yourself, I even said in the presentation, I said, I traveled 3,000 miles to come out here to Vancouver to give this talk. And guess why I did it? Is because I wanted to be here with you. I wanted to be here. And that was the most important thing for me to do, is to be here with you today, right now. That's why I traveled. Otherwise, I would have stayed home. It's the only reason. I mean, you can talk about everything, but it's fundamental, and you can't forget that. And the expected utility, and the key to that is an expected utility. It's what you anticipate is going to be the value to you. And that expected utility is the expectation of the value of being there minus the cost of getting there. So if the cost is getting there is zero, then it's just a value of, oh my goodness, I'm going to be such a happier camper. But what I expect to be a happy camper, now it may turn out that, made it terrible if things turn south, whatever. Who knows? Hey, we're always looking into the future when we travel. So it's all about expectations, and expectations of the cost of getting there. And why did we go a certain way? Well, the way we designed to go a certain way, the reason I didn't walk from Princeton to Vancouver and flew is because, man, the cost to me of walking would have been, oh my goodness. And to fly there, well, not so bad. And, in which way I could have flown nonstop using Air Canada, and if I'm doing United, I have to change in Denver. But looking at the times and whatever, chose to change in Denver. Okay, why? Because hey, in terms of the not only price, but the difficulty and the apprehension and the pain in the butt associated of travel, I expected, the best way, the expected cost of traveling through Denver was the best way to go. So that's the way I went. And I turned to the people in the audience and I said, guess what? All of you, guess why you're here? Is because you expected being here with me, listening to my talk, was the best thing that could happen to you at this particular time. And that's why you came. And I so appreciate that you had that expectation of me. I hope I'm not going to, somehow not live up to it. But that's why you do it. It's very fundamental, very simple, very straightforward. Not a computer trying to do these expectations. There's a lot of details that gets into a lot of things and isn't so trivial, because you might have different value propositions than what I have and so on. And so you'll make different choices. But everybody's rational, I believe, and everybody makes rational choices, their own rationality. I might look at their rationality and say, boy, you're screwed up. But what made me God to think that your rationality, Fred, is not up to par? I mean, it's your rationality. And so it's your expectations, your value for being there, your expectation of cost of getting there. That's what it is. So the key dimensions of these expected costs, I'll claim, there are others, but the key dimensions of the expected costs are safety, equity, affordability, sustainability, and quality, the level of service. There's some other ones that we could talk about. These are really important ones, okay? And they somehow combine, and in your brain, each individual puts all those things together and adds them up to get an expected cost of getting there. And that's how that's all done. And so if we look at, how big is the market for mobility in the US? So what is the total addressable vehicular moving by vehicles on the ground mobility market in the US, not including walk trips? Walk trips are sort of, they're kind of weird and difficult to handle. So let's not even talk about them, because they're usually extremely short. Every once in a while, somebody walks a long distance, but very rarely. So we have a US population of about 330 million. We have daily person trips of about 3.5 of these non-walking trips per person on average, roughly that number, which leaves about 1.1 billion person trips per day. So in the US today, there are about 1.1 billion trips taken by individuals, making individual decisions that, my goodness, they really wanted to get someplace, and their expected value minus the expected cost of doing that, the best thing they wanted to do. And they chose a way to go, and they went. And tomorrow it's going to be about the same, and next day is going to be about the same, and next days, individually they won't be the same trips, but that's what it is. And about 90% of these trips are taken by a personal car. Only 3% of them are taken by transit. Less than 1% are by ride hailing or taxi. And I like to throw in there about 5% of trips that really should have been taken, but weren't taken, probably because the cost of taking them was so high to the individual that they just couldn't make it happen. But if we looked at them and said, my goodness, society, they would have been better off if we could have somehow done something about that cost. And the cost, I'm talking about generalized cost, and not just how much money comes out of your pocketbook, but it's also the safety, the reliability, the comfort, a whole bunch of other things put together. And we'll call them latent trips that probably should have been taken that weren't. Average trip lengths for the person trip lengths is, really less than 5 miles, has an extremely long tail. Like last Sunday, when I went out to Vancouver, traveled 3,000 miles, there were a lot of other people traveled 3,000 miles. But very few out there at the end of the tail distribution compared to the bulk of the trips are, 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile, 4 mile, 5 mile, that's what that distribution looks like. Many very short, but an extremely long tail. The market value of all these trips, we might put it at a bucket trip, something like a bucket trip. So, this is like about 5 billion USA per day associated in the value of all this, which is a market, a total addressable market is something like 1.5 trillion US per day. That's a pretty nice market.
That's per year, yes.
Per year. Thank you. Yes. So, that's what it looks like. So if we look at mobility today, it really is pretty good, but it has challenges of safety, challenges of equity, challenges of affordability, at least for some, and a non-trivial number of the 330 million Americans, sustainability, and really the quality of that compared to what the bulk of the population has available to them. So the issue really comes to pass on this is what, where, and how can automation help safety, equity, affordability, sustainability, and high quality?
And we've talked a lot about the equity piece here, because when we say mobility is really pretty good these days, good for most people, but not for everyone. And that's one of the things that we focused on, right?
And that's what we focus on. And that's really what we want to put out here. And in fact, yes, safety, my goodness, sure. We kill 100 a day, 100 a day die, which is a lot of people. But it's a safety situation that we're certainly, I guess, willing to accept up to this point because of the great benefit that we get out of the automobile. I mean, as I said before, 90% of the trips, greater than 90% of the vehicle trips are taken in automobiles. Why? Because folks, when they looked at where they wanted to go, where they wanted to be, and how they wanted to get there, found a way to do it with an automobile. And of course, that has some safety, equity, affordability, sustainability, quality of that sets the bar, sets where it is. So that if we look at the what, where, and how guiding principles of all this, the marketplace, because it is a marketplace of individual choice, of individuals making a choice of to go, not to go, and how to go when they decide to go there. And so, the guiding principles, one of them is that deployment, I believe, should be, must be, and is coupled to consumer demand. So in fact, you do deployment where in fact you're going to have some customers. Of course. Why would you deploy where you don't? Well, sometimes every once in a while we look at somewhere where maybe some transportation systems have been built and nobody shows up. Okay, shouldn't have done that. But really, the customer demand and deployment, customer demand really should be, pulling deployment because they're integrally coupled. If anything is going to happen, then the marketplace needs to do it. Why? Because the public sector isn't rich enough. And if the marketplace is going to do it, then, this dependence on looking at customer demand is really, really key. And then, of course, what about technology and technology's role in all of this? And I claim it comes from Joe Schumpeter. Unfortunately, he was a Harvard professor, not a Princeton economics professor, but, can't be perfect, but we love him dearly. And his disruptive technology threshold, which to me is the key guiding principle in a capitalist reality. It is not price competition which counts, but the competition from the new commodity, the new technology. That's what startups are all about. Competition which commands a decisive cost and or quality advantage, and which strikes not at the margins of the profits and the outputs of the existing firms. In other words, it's not just a little bit different than we're just going to, compete, very narrowly, but at their foundations and their very lives. In other words, it's substantially different. And we have a number of examples of technologies that have come in and totally disrupted the status quo, that were very different in terms of cost and quality or quality, and went out there and just turned the market, took it all. iPhone, of course, being one of them. One looks at the internet, one looks now at streaming versus cable, and so on and so forth. These are substantially different. And this is the disruptive technology threshold that really needs to take place here if the market is going to respond, if the customer demands and is going to be able to respond to a deployment that is in fact disruptive. So the question is, if we look at automation role, technology role, we have to talk about, well, what kind of automation, which are incarnation of automation? And I guess from the beginning, Fred, we've talked about these things. NHTSA has its levels, which everybody knows I don't like. Why? Because they're called levels, and I ended up calling all this smart driving cars, and I claim there are only 3 levels. And one of the levels is what safe driving cars. And I continuously use these days this image of the safe driving car. This is the image. The individual here in the car can be turning the steering wheel and hitting the pedals and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But the technology back here is absolutely making sure that these drivers and passengers in this vehicle will never be harmed. They'll never hit an aisle. They'll never have a collision. She's going to make sure of that. And to me, this is what safe driving cars are all about. They have speed limiters, breathalyzer ignition interlocks, intelligent cruise control, lane centering, automated emergency braking that really works. And these things are on all the time, watching over us. Why? Because, of course, as we've done here for a very long time, Fred, we've said that everybody wants to quote that greater than 90% of the car crashes involve humans in the loop someplace. Well, it's not just humans in the loop, it's the driver misbehavior that leads to those things. Driver misbehavior, the most biggest one is, looking at your texting on your phone, not paying attention, falling asleep, drinking too much.
You're not big on people saying I had an accident.
They're not accidents. Absolutely not. And we should stop calling them that. They're driver misbehavior. Ran into the back of me. Why? Because they were tailgating me. They ran off the road. Why? Because who knows? They're checking something out or whatever, and whatever. That's where those things happen. And so, what we need is technology that basically will be our get out of jail free card, our savior, in case we misbehave. It'll let us do a bunch of stuff. But if the things that we're doing is about to lead into a crash, it's going to intervene in there and stop the crash. So if we're really interested in alleviating safety, and safety is our big concern, then we need to have these systems. They essentially all exist today in cars on all the time. Now, the problem is that the marketplace hasn't responded very well to, safety objectives. Now, safety is a hard sell. So these things probably need to be mandated. So if the Secretary of Transportation really wants to do something about safety, then he should mandate speed limiters. Shouldn't be able to go more than I don't know, pick a number, 9 over, maybe 14 over, certainly not more than that. You shouldn't be able to start the car if you've had too much to drink. These systems exist. Intelligent cruise control that doesn't wait until you're 1.6 seconds to collision, but actually as you approach and you come from infinity to 10 seconds, to 6 seconds, to 5 seconds, as you approach, it starts to do something. It doesn't just let you run up at the bend and all of a sudden turn the darn thing on the way these systems work today. And should the OEMs do this? If they put a breathalyzer in a car, even for free, how many will they sell? I'll suggest 0. Okay. If they put a speed limiter on there and not let me go greater than 9 miles over, I'm going to clip the wires. So somebody has to come in there and do it. We've done it before. We've done it with stability control. Since 2012, every car has to have stability control. That means that if I'm going around a corner too fast, the sensors figure out that I'm about to lose my rear end. The system kicks in, applies brakes, torque, who knows what, whatever, to stabilize me, takes over, basically takes the steering wheel and the brakes, steering wheel out of my hands and brakes off of my feet and throttle off of my feet and saves the day. And after I stop sweating from it saving the day, I'm there, oh, thank you. Oh my goodness. Am I lucky to have that?
Any thoughts about how many lives you say we lose 100 lives a day in the US?
Well, then the number is 90% or because we misbehave. If we put things in there that watch us misbehave, because these crashes are not crashes that happen instantaneously. There's a lead up to them. One can sense that it is. A beautiful presentation that was also made at the conference was by Waymo, showing that, you know, Waymo vehicle, through their simulations, if it would have been the vehicle in which a car that went through a red light that's at 107 miles an hour and T-boned some other car making a left turn, the car making a left turn didn't see him coming because why? You're making a left turn, this thing's coming from the right, you're looking this way, of course not. But because they basically had 360 vision, the Waymo car would have seen that. Would have seen that 107 mile an hour car approaching, would have tapped the brakes, slowed down a little bit, and the car would have gone in front of it. The systems exist to do this. So if you're really interested in safety, the way to do it is to put some of these systems in cars and not let people misbehave. Even if somebody else that doesn't have this is going 107 miles an hour, these systems could go out there and save you and that person. But this is safe driving cars. Okay? This is a separate market, and in some sense, part of the market in which Mobileye's in. The second one is the self-driving cars. You know, on some of the time, and it's a driver's choice in some certified areas and certified times, but the driver remains responsible for the safe and legal operation of the vehicle. Okay, just because you can take your hands off the wheel, I mean, taking your hands off the wheel, who cares? The more important thing is taking your feet off the brakes and throttle. And out of that, but you have to remain, you're the responsible and legal person that's responsible for both the safe and the legal operation of the vehicle. Now, these systems are extremely popular. I mean, you know, I've called them the ultimate texting machine because if I can take my maybe I can text. And they're so darn good and there's nothing around, it's doing the driving, maybe I can. That's what people are doing. And these things are selling in the showrooms. The madmen have taken these to be the new, I call them chrome and fins of selling cars. What, half of the models in showrooms today have these features, and people are buying them. My goodness, what does it do? Does something for safety, does improve high quality. For sustainability, affordability, and equity, not so much. But this is but the driver has to remain alert, remain being responsible for the safe and legal operation of the vehicle. This is the key fine print. And there's no car that's sold today to individuals that doesn't require this responsibility, whether it has technology or not. And then the third one is, of course, driverless cars. On all the time, in certified areas, at certified times, so-called operational design domain, and there's no driver or attendant in there. What does that do? For safety, probably not much. About the only thing, the real opportunity to at least remain as safe as the existing systems is that at least it's not going to misbehave. Because of course, those that are designing the driver controls on this make sure that it doesn't misbehave. It doesn't severely exceed the speed limit. It doesn't tailgate. It doesn't fall asleep because it has backups and redundancy. It doesn't run red lights, etc. What it really does, because it doesn't have a driver, is address affordability. Providing mobility with a vehicle that you don't have to pay the driver is actually cheaper than you providing mobility for yourself. Why is the car, the personally owned car, so dominant in providing mobility? It's because the rides that it provides to the individual is not charged, that individual is not charged for the cost of the driver, because you're doing the driving. It's like going to Home Depot, do it yourself. Okay, you do the work, you don't have to pay for somebody else to do it. And here, this has been the sort of the beautiful perceived cost benefit of personal cars, as nobody says, oh my goodness, I should be charging myself, oh, it's Sunday, double time, to drive myself to go to Starbucks to get a cup of coffee. Nobody thinks that way. The driver's free. And in fact, everything that's been set up for the car makes it seem as if the whole operation is free. Nobody ever touches the money. Insurance premiums, hey, maybe, every 6 months. Gas and oil, gas, whenever you load up, or whenever you fill up, give them credit card, never see it. Each time you get in the car, it doesn't say, hey, I need exact change here. It doesn't remind you as to what it costs. I mean, it's been a beautiful marketing situation that the madmen have put in, so that our perception of mobility with our personal car is essentially free. I mean, I used to joke with my students when I haven't seen them lately, when there were advertisements on TV about buying a car, and they'll give you $10,000 cash back if you buy a new whatever. You go in the showroom, you get $10,000 cash back, or whatever, $5,000 cash back. And I say, oh my goodness, I want to buy 10 of them. man, I'll walk out of there with 100,000. Well, you know, they never tell you the price. They just tell you about the cash back. Oh, got to have one of those. That's all because all this is done with respect to making consumer choices based on the perception, and all these costs have been hidden. However, if we now have a computer doing the driving, and it's at any kind of scale, that computer behaves like Moore's law. Its individual cost basically goes to zero with scale. So now you can approach a personally driven car with the cost of a personally driven car with the cost of a computer driven car, because now there's no driver to pay. And in fact, now if this car it provides mobility to me, then goes over and provides mobility to you, then comes back and provides more mobility to me, and then goes back and provides more mobility to you, that asset, the vehicle asset, is now being shared between the two of us. So actually, if one really goes and says, hey, what's the capital cost of each of the ride? My goodness, we're sharing it. And if you can get to, as we always use the elevator analogy on this thing, if you can share rides every once in a while, so it doesn't give me mobility, then goes over and give you mobility, Fred, and then comes back to me or whatever, goes to the third person, moves around. If it takes two people at the same time, that means whatever cost of mobility is to the individual is divided by two. If it's three, it's divided by, these are so simple, but what it really does is address this affordability issue. It now makes the opportunity to give rides from A to B within the operational design domain to be really inexpensive. And so for anybody who is price sensitive in terms of travel, this makes a big difference. So where are we with these driverless cars? Investment wise, technologically, McKinsey basically has it out there that, we've spent 206 billion or invested 206 billion in autonomous vehicle technologies. And essentially all of that has gone into testing to get the driverless technology to work safely somewhere. So the investment all in testing. Deployment wise, sort of the sociology of this provision of mobility with respect to driverless cars, to date, essentially zero revenue has been booked, essentially zero. Waymo's had a little bit in Phoenix, and I guess, when GM Cruise has a little, very little in San Francisco, but that's it. And essentially zero societal value has been captured. None of them are providing mobility to a bunch of folks who, really could use affordable mobility to get to where they would really like to go and certainly deal with some of that latent travel demand. Done none of that. Why? Because the deployments today have not focused the leverage the technology's disruptive attributes. Why? Because the deployments today have not focused to leverage the technology's disruptive attributes. They've been focused on those that already have great mobility options. These deployments have no hope of becoming disruptive. For whom are the strengths of driverless cars, safety, equity, affordability, sustainability, high quality, likely to be disruptive? Limousine and black car users. Are you kidding? No chance. People who use limousines and black cars, first of all, they don't pay for it. Okay, so the affordability opportunity has no meaning because they're price insensitive. And they're so interested in high quality. Oh, Professor Kornhauser, can I take your bag? Can I help you in? And all that stuff. the quality of driverless cars has no way of being as good as black cars and limousines. So if you go in the market and you say, oh, I'm going to get black car and limousine users to use these things, good luck. Maybe you'll get them for the first time they want to see and take a selfie, and they can, send it to their, oh, I went and rode in driverless cars. Are they going to come back for a second trip? What's the value of that selfie the second time? Close to zero. Certainly the third time it's zero. So they have no chance. How about ride hailers? Well, no. Most ride hailers travel on an expense account. So they're not price sensitive. At least, the really expensive trips. And so therefore, except for those in which affordability really matters, ride hailers, that's not the market that you want. How about car drivers? Hey, maybe you can get some car drivers that actually look, oh my goodness, look at how much a car costs me. And if I take this, you might be able to get some. There's certainly a lot of them, but only for those in which affordability really matters. And those that don't have a car that they can drive themselves, that's a little bit different issue. Here, affordability and high quality is disruptive. Why? Because what they have in terms of opportunities is not very good. And my goodness, affordability, if they had money, they'd probably buy a car, but they don't have a car. So this is the market that is disruptive, where driverless cars can be disruptive. And who are those that are in that market? The too young, those that don't have driver's license yet. Why? Because their existing firms in the Schumpeter, the concept, include what? Chauffeured by parents, the bus, walking. Oh my goodness. Not very high quality. Well, maybe chauffeured by parents is, but my goodness, what you have to beg and do to be able to get that? They're too old. Here, the existing firms include chauffeured by children, the bus and walking. Not very good options. The too poor. The existing firms include chauffeured by friends, begging a friend to take you, and then owing them something for it. The bus or walking. Again, the competition is not very high quality, and a high quality driverless mobility is disruptive. There are not enough cars in the family. Their existing firms are chauffeured by the driver in the family, the bus or walking. And again, alternatives are not very strong. And then the physically challenged. The physically challenged, what are their existing ways, the existing firms of getting there? Chauffeured by family or paratransit. And my goodness, paratransit, whatever. So what we've done is we put together a mobility disadvantage index, which is a function of auto availability, income, and transit accessibility, and basically looked at geographic areas across the country to then build distributions of the percentage of households in those particular areas as a function of mobility disability index. And the mobility disadvantaged index. Okay, what these distributions say that, in fact, if we look at them, the bottom part of that distribution are those that can be targeted and have the best opportunity for the driverless mobility to be disruptive. And the opportunity now that disruptive level of service can be provided affordably through driverless cars, have the opportunity to now become the customers for such deployments. So out of this, why do we look at this kind of thing is because, if we look at baseline societal benefits programs that have provided basic societal needs. We have food and food stamps. We have retirement benefits through Social Security. We have Medicare for health. Housing has a number of affordable housing programs for people. Education has Pell Grants. Mobility, what's been done in mobility to provide mobility benefits to these folks? Well, we built rail transit systems that are really for the rich. We have bus systems, and the service of those is absolutely compared to being able to drive your own car is extremely poor. And the paratransit services, I think in New Jersey Transit, it costs like $60 a ride to provide that paratransit service that you have to set up in advance with who knows 2-hour windows and so on, and basically spend all the time during the day for the trips that you're about to take. The quality of the service is in any measure, it's great that it's there, but it is absolutely lowest common denominator. Whereas affordable, high quality mobility can transform what we believe affordable housing into affordable living. So if you add on to affordable housing, affordable high quality mobility, that leads to affordable living. So the suggestion for the how of deployment of safe, equitable, affordable, sustainable, high quality mobility is what we've come up with: a MOVE style deployment, mobility opportunity vehicle, equitable systems, which, what is it? It's elevator like. Always use the elevator analogy here. Why? Because how do you use an elevator? You walk into the front of the building, you walk to the elevator bank. It's not sitting there right there at the front door. You then either elevator is waiting for you, open, and you walk in, or you summon one by hitting a button. It comes, you get in, and it's shared casually when appropriate. If somebody else shows up, gets in with you, then you share the ride. So instead of being floor to floor, which is elevator like, we talk about kiosk to kiosk service. The kiosks are what? They're no more than a 5-minute walk away from any of the places in a particular community, so that you have basically a short walk from the front door to the elevator bank, or a short walk from your home to a kiosk, or from the kiosk to a church, to a health provider, to whatever. So it's something like less than 5-minute walk with a level of service that's within 5 minutes. You from the time that you summon the vehicle or get in the vehicle to the time it departs is something less than 5 minutes. And the kind of operation is at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But instead of trying to operate 365.25 days in a year, here in New Jersey, we like to talk about 350 days of operation. Now, if it snows too much, well, please wait until we shovel the snow, and then we'll provide the service. If this is a 10th anniversary of Hurricane Sandy, if we're having a Hurricane Sandy, we're not trying to solve the mobility and Hurricane Sandy problem. We're trying to provide opportunities for safe, equitable, affordable, sustainable, high quality mobility to people who really don't have access to good mobility. And having this kind of level of service, 5-minute wait within a 5-minute walk to where you're coming from or going to, 24/7, 350 is, we consider, extremely high quality. It's almost as good of quality as having your own car to take and to go whenever you want to wherever you want to go.
And we should point out, Alan, too, that there'd be few, if any, stops between from where you're picked up and where you're going.
Yeah, there are really none. So if I'm coming from this kiosk and going to that kiosk, it just takes me boom, 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 and it goes. Okay, and there's somebody else might get in, but that other person that gets in with me is not going here, but they're going down here, down there, or maybe here. And so you drop them off, and then you go to yours, or you get dropped off, and then it goes there. So the idea is it's kiosk to kiosk, using only a subset of the road systems. This is the Trenton network. Which subset of the road system? The subset for which it is this the safest mobility for the capability for these systems. So there's mostly low speed and so on. At least here for Trenton, for this 60 kiosk network. The speeds never have to get above 35 miles an hour. Most of the time they're running at 25 to 35 miles an hour. The level of service is really fantastic. It's as good as driving your own car from any of these places. And you have the opportunity to go to some very important points like the Trenton Transit Center that give you access not only to the train station, but then everywhere else where the train station goes. And the train station where does New Jersey Transit Northeast Corridor service goes, it also goes to Newark Airport. Newark Airport, where do you go? You can go anywhere in the world. So all of a sudden you have access through this system, very easy access to any place in the world. What the kiosk might look like. This is a kiosk that the preliminary design for at Trenton High School. And why did we have our initial proposal for Trenton? Well, it is the state capital in New Jersey, but more importantly, 70% of Trenton households have access to one or fewer cars. So in fact, a large portion of Trenton residents have access to very poor mobility options. And this driverless technology now available to them, for them, it is totally disruptive. And because it's affordable and it would be easy for people that are really poor to be able to provide transit stamps, it provides the affordability aspect along with a high quality of service, really guarantee a market for this service. And the level of service, the cost of providing the service is so low that you can actually make a profit, and a profit of let's say $1 a trip. Why? Because each one of the cost of each one of the trips here, person trips, is $1.50 at most. And so there's a real opportunity to not only provide extremely affordable mobility, but also do it in the private marketplace of the provision of the trips. We've looked at public housing in Trenton as how you might convert Donley Homes into a place where these vehicles are sitting and waiting, and to provide mobility to the folks. To go out to Walmart, if you don't have a car, how do you get to Walmart? Well, these things could take you to Walmart, and the kiosks at Walmart might look like something like this, where the vehicles waiting stations are near the front door to the Walmart and provide accessibility there. If one looks at all the person trips in Trenton that are part of the total addressable market, one sees that there are basically 100,000 per day person trips in that total addressable market that occurs at the rates that one is seeing here per minute throughout the 24 hours a day. These peaks in the morning are not only trips to work, but also trips to school. These peaks over here are really trips from school. Yes, mobility is not provided for kids going to school in Trenton. So if you live more than half a mile from a school, this is a real mobility opportunity for them. The way we've talked about evolving this is by starting initially with a phase in which we're operating 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 350 days a year, but with an attendant on board. Now you say, oh my goodness, now you got to pay an attendant. I thought you were telling me that this thing's going to be affordable. In the beginning, one has to pay for an attendant. Why? Not to prove that the technology works. One assumes that the $200 billion that's already been invested in technology has a working in Trenton, that it's safe. It's to provide, allow for the customer to become acclimated to the service. So just like with elevators, originally there was an elevator operator on board. People got used to, were willing to get into an elevator because there was an elevator operator on board. At some point they said, well, my goodness, that elevator operator really is doing nothing. It can just run automated. Pull the elevator operator. And where do you pull it? Well, you pull it to then be able to convert this operational design to driverless operation, extend the operation to 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, 350 days, and then use those to extend and expand the operational design domain to acclimate even more customers. And after that acclimation point, convert the whole thing to driverless operation and use the attendants to acclimate even more customers, and to eventually turn out to have sustained operation, not just in Trenton, New Jersey, but throughout Mercer County. And not only throughout Mercer County, but then replicate that in Camden and Atlantic City and New Brunswick and Perth Amboy and Newark and Patterson and so on throughout the state. And then maybe even, the Brooklyn Queens expressway domain of Brooklyn and Queens on the east side of the East River to provide mobility. Basically, elevator-like direct origin to destination mobility through the vehicles, where here the total addressable market for trips is 1 million person trips a day. Get 10% of those, 100,000 person trips a day, make $1 on each one, profits 100,000 per day, times 300 days per year or so. Ooh, that's doing pretty well. You could do that with maybe 75 kiosks, 500 vehicles, serve, 75,000 with 500 vehicles operating out there, and really focusing on this mobility disadvantage. Look at all the other 100 plus 200 places throughout the United States where similar systems would be viable to do what? To deliver societal value at scale. So this would be success driven by evolving the operational design domains through replication throughout the country in so many places where there are so many people who could whose quality of life could be substantially improved with this kind of affordable, sustainable, equitable, safe, high quality mobility. Thank you.
Well said, Alain.
Yes, Fred. To me, this is a market-driven opportunity to do deployment and to basically have a place in which you have an ignition to basically an explosive deployment to scale. It's driven by the marketplace. Why? Because in these markets of mobility disadvantage, the opportunity here of affordability and high quality mobility is so disruptive that people will then take it repeatedly every day, and this builds a true market that can flourish, as opposed to going after what black car and limousine users who will, my goodness, you got to be kidding.
That's in some of the headlines we're going to chat about. For instance, Waymo is now making passenger trips to Phoenix Airport. I mean, we've talked about Waymo before, and the argument that you pose is that they could be doing things that provide mobility to people who don't have many options.
Right. I mean, if you look at any customer that they take, from downtown Phoenix to Phoenix to the airport, what improvement have they provided? A selfie? Are they really going to go out there and say, "Hey, our price for that trip is 20% of what it's going to cost you in Uber"? Are they really going to compete on price? Are they really going to be disruptive on price? If they are, well, then they have the opportunity to take a lot more people. But I don't believe that that's what they're looking at. They're looking to take the folks from downtown Phoenix, who are on expense account, who don't care how much they spend. Okay, I mean, they do care, but they're not price sensitive.
Right.
And really, they're gonna, instead of have a black card, what's the what's the societal improvement on that? None. Might be negative.
You've used the word disruptive repeatedly through the presentation, and that's really what we're talking about here. Look,
the reason $200 billion's been invested in this thing is because it's going to do something different, really good. It has to do that if it expects to get back $200 billion in value. Otherwise, if it just sits out there and competes, sort of, hey, whatever, and I'm going to, steal a few trips from Uber and Lyft and bring the demise of Uber and Lyft more quickly, okay.
That's another headline from the newsletter, from the latest newsletter. Lyft laying off 13% of its workforce with a bleak economic outlook.
Well, yeah, because unfortunately, you have to pay for the driver, and the driver deserves to earn a living wage. And it's not only the time that the driver has to spend taking you from A to B, it's also the time that the driver has to spend getting to you, and maybe part of the time that the driver has to spend getting to the next person, although maybe they should pay for that. Or the driver has to sit around waiting until you're ready to go or you want to go. Right. And so they have to sit there and whatever, they deserve to be paid. They don't just deserve to be on the moment. I mean, it's just not the way we work. The beauty of having a computer do this is it can sit around and wait. Do you know how long my computer on my desktop sits around and waits for me to get on and provide service to me? And then if I go do something else, this sits around and just, I'll just wait for him and serve him. Okay? It's completely different when you're dealing with a human than with a computer. And the opportunity that we have with these driverless vehicles operated as a fleet is that, my goodness, they can be shared between the two of us, between the rest of us. So if I'm not using it, you might be using it. And they can do shared rides too. When I'm using it, you're using it too at the same time. That addresses affordability in a major way. So then the question is, which markets can be disrupted to then capture customers, repeat customers who value that affordability, who value that affordability.
Well, you've certainly made the case with the presentation here.
Well, I don't know. It's a preach. I'm sorry, folks, but those are the fundamentals.
And we encourage people who've watched this to share it with others. Yes. Share the podcast throughout the industry.
Yeah,
academia,
right.
wherever there is interest.
Right, and there's a link to the slide, so you don't have to. You can sit there and read instead of listen to my preaching. But I just wanted to walk folks through it. I know.
Well done. Well, a couple of other quick headlines. Aurora, sure. We had mentioned Aurora. They're reaffirming they have enough cash to run until commercial deployment. I guess that they're kind of answering their earlier reports.
Yeah, and I sure hope they do, but it really emphasizes the fact that they're still pre-revenue.
Right.
And those of us that have started businesses and those of us that have been in it all know that, my goodness, our expectations of when revenue starts always seems to be extremely optimistic. So, I mean, my advice to any student starting a business, hey, don't really start until you have revenue, okay? Don't leave your day job until you have revenue in this startup that you want to do, okay?
Tesla, Alain, another headline, has released a new FSD Beta. I'm calling it FSD.
Yeah, please.
Not the not what it stands for.
Yeah, please, let's stop. Yeah, they released 69.3, and their release notes have been are out there on the web, and it looks like more improvements. So they're making progress, but they're really nowhere near driverless, where people would just use it anywhere. Driverless, they're trying to do driverless everywhere. That is just so difficult. Why don't you just do it somewhere? As I said to them, why don't you do a release, run some vehicles around Trenton for a while, give you some data, and then you can do a release, FSD 69.Trenton, that then can provide the repeated safe mobility operation within that operational design domain. And when we go to expand the whole thing through Mercer County, then we'll spend a little bit of time and give you some more data to make sure that now you FSD.Mercer County, but not everywhere. Just on the streets, the safest where it's easiest for you, not where it's toughest. Because where it's too hard, we won't go there. We don't need to go there. There are ways to go that are easy, safe. There are ways to go that you shouldn't unless you're whatever. So, if you work the problem that way, I think we can get to deployment to deliver at least some societal benefits and generate some revenue, some profits early, to give us a chance to do more work to then grow it. And in fact, one's not trying to provide cross-country trips. We're just trying to get the people in Trenton to the Trenton train station. And then if they have to go to North Jersey, they can take New Jersey Transit up to Newark, and then Newark get the Newark moves to take them to where they're going. And so the system in Newark only has to work in the Newark moves. The system in Trenton only in the Trenton moves. That can be two different releases of the software. And the cars don't go here and have to operate there. They all stay here. They're just fine, thank you, with the more manageable, the easier to generate, the safer set of dials, values on your deep learning, so that it really does work. It is safe.
You make it sound easier than landing Falcon Heavy boosters.
No, it's not easier. Landing Falcon Heavy boosters is basically just F equals MA with, whatever. It doesn't have kids running out, chasing balls. It doesn't have people going through red lights at 107 miles an hour or whatever. It doesn't have all that misbehavior. It really is. Driverless cars are more difficult than rocket science, and SpaceX has really made rocket science. I mean, they've done a beautiful job. So I also link in there in the newsletter the Falcon Heavy launch last week, which was really impressive again. It's either totally impressive or totally photoshopped. I don't think it's for some reason. For some reason, I don't think that one's photoshopped.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think the U.S. Space Force is going to let SpaceX Photoshop the launch of their satellites anyway.
Well, on that note, we want to thank CARTS, the Corporation for Automated Road Transportation Safety, for helping to make this podcast possible. CARTS is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to safe and high-quality mobility for all. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com, also on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Amazon, Spreaker, wherever you turn to for podcasts. Your smart speaker can play us too. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alain Kornhauser. Thank you for listening or watching. Please stay safe and have a great week ahead.
Thank you.